So, hello. Today, I want to bring forward a lot of information about magical theatre, one of my favourite subjects, the history of spirituality, and it ties in with witches and mediums and a lot of things that I speak about, that I write about, that I create theatre about. And I want to add in a lot of the history of it and bring it forward to her story, my story, and my take on it as a witch, a spiritual person, and a healer, and all of those things that get intertwined about who we are today. And I feel for me, as a magical theatre maker, 5D theatre being my business that I put into the world to help bring magical realism to the modern world, to the mainstream, to help people understand a genre of theatre, spiritual realism, that we are real people and our stories deserve to be told. Because in my feeling and my soul's gnosis, knowledge, we've had that history buried out of us, taken away from us. And I feel that it's been done for a reason. I would say that as a spiritual activist. So let me dive in to where I want to start, and that is with my great grandfather, Cecil Husk. Now, Cecil Husk was a very famous medium, and he lived in the period of 1847 to 1920. So this is a very interesting time for magical theatre that some people might not know about, because whilst he was working around this time, there was also a crossover with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which was started up in London as well. And actually they crossed over to be quite places that weren't too far away in London. And I think this is interesting because I live in London, and trying to bring theatre out in London, importantly. And so, so to me, this is the realm that I'm diving in. But let me start with Cecil, and I have a lot of notes because I was going to go through it in a workshop the other day, and I ran out of time because there was so much alive witch history in me. There's so much that I want to bring forward, and I will be bringing more. I'm gently and prominently, I feel both of those words are important, walking the witch's wheel with Eimear Stassin, who I've been co-collaborating with and working with for quite a while, a soul sister, a big witch leader, and she walks the earth wheel around the Celtic medicine wheel, and brings forward myths and stories from those lands and those times. But I feel, as a London storyteller, witch, rebel witch, activist, I wanted to bring forward the karma that these times have, the karma that many witches carry, and it isn't even theirs to carry, I would say, but also worth looking down our lineages and seeing quite distinctly how the spiritual people have been persecuted, because the keys, the nuggets of wisdom are in that persecution of the people. The mediums, the witches. I mean, the witches is quite an obvious one. We all know about the burning times. We all know how they were killed, or, most people are aware that there was a witch persecution craze, and aware that people persecute, there's still killings that happen today, and it's big. And I've written a whole play about it called Awaken, where I've written my story about my past life when I was killed for being a witch. But it's only more recently that I've really looked down the history and to understand the stories of what really was going on. And it did start with delving deeper into a few things that my auntie brought into my awareness. Now, my auntie is clairvoyant. She's seen spirits before, like I have. She's telepathic, and she tells me that these skills have been dying out because we're not using them. So I feel like mediumship and supernatural skills is something that is our birthright and that we can reclaim. But I didn't know until she told me that I had a famous great grandfather, who was Cecil Husk, who was a very prominent medium in London. And if you type him in Wikipedia, you'll just find Cecil Husk was caught as a fraud, something like that, and that he was known as a psychic medium. He had a lot of skills, which is kind of a lot of what's been bypassed, that he could move things with his mind, and he saw spirits when he was younger. He would see spirits coming into the room and they wouldn't talk to him. Now, he spoke to his dad about this, and his dad was in the spiritualist movement, so he was very open to it. I believe that his mother wasn't, but he actually went on tour with, I always forget where it was, the Carl Rosa Opera Company. So he was a singer before he was going into mediumship. But it was actually in 1879 when he first debuted his work as a medium. And he became very successful and very well known. And there was John King, was one of the people that he channeled. And his seances, and this brings me wrapping around into theatre and magic, were very spectacle, very magical. He would sing, and he would make things appear. There was actually this time when someone brought a really small metal ring to see if he could make that manifest onto his hand, and that actually happened, and I believe that he never managed to get that off. So there was a lot of amazing things that he could do, and he would sing himself. He would also bring forward voices. People would hear voices. He'd actually bring forward spirit matter, ectoplasm, and I believe there was times when people actually saw spirits. And then one time, much later in his career, they saw a spirit of someone that was still alive. And then that led people to saying he was fraudulent, which feels crazy to me, because although mediums pull through spirits, I work as a medium, but I work with souls, which means I work with souls from another dimension. I work from souls in higher spirit, and I work with people's souls who are still living, because actually on a soul's consciousness, we never die. And that's the thing about mediumship. Sometimes it feels like it was limited into certain boxes, and I'm a great advocate of multi-dimensional mediumship, that we are spirit. There is spirit in the ether, there is spirit in the lands, there's spirit everywhere, spirit in animals, plant kingdom. And because this spirit is everywhere, we can tap in to all of those souls and spirits that we choose to. And this is what Cecil was doing himself, but actually that led to a problem. But around this time he was also going blind, so some say his health was suffering, and I believe they think that he actually started to fake a lot of things in his seances. But when you read the wealth of knowledge that's out there about all the stuff, the magic and the miracles and the people and the spirits that he brought through, I find that we have to question people calling anyone fraudulent. And this is why, because there was mediums like Helen Duncan, who was the last one tried under the Witchcraft Act before it was repealed. And she could tap into things and actually tap into spirits from the war. And she tapped into a ship that had gone down, and one of the army soldiers had gone down with it, and she channeled this and then basically told the person that was there that she had her son there. They didn't know he died, and she went back to call the army, and then they had to tell her that the ship had gone down. So she got knowledge that she shouldn't have had. And this is what we've got to remember, that mediumship and psychic abilities give you knowledge that some people don't feel that you should have. And yeah, there's so much bad juju about channeling and channeling the devil. I mean, me myself, when I speak out a lot of issues, strangely enough, when I speak out about Satanism, things like that, and what's going on in the drop consciousness, I often get called a demon, or I get hate mail or a kickback, which is insane because I'm shining a light on it. And I don't feel that you can be a witch or a medium without seeing that there's shadows in it, for sure. But what I do know is that I have this lovely quote. So let me just tell you, the Witchcraft Act in 1735 came all the way forward until it was repealed way into the 20th century. So it was repealed in 2008. And this meant, so rather than being brutalized or murdered for being a witch, you got into trouble if you claimed to have the power to call up spirits. And then you get fine and imprisonment if you foretold the future, called up spirits, or cast spells that would turn out to be fraudulent. But what happened was a lot of people got cast fraudulent when they were telling the truth. So in many ways, it was quite a recent way to spiritual persecute people. And Husk, in his own words, said that a lot of people called him Luciferian or a heretic, a name called because we had this uprising of science and Darwinism at the time. So we were meant to believe in that rather than this supernatural spirit. But he actually replied and said, I believe in God. I believe in this force, but I believe in it as a light force to do good rather than I don't worship the dark side. So there he was telling you what he would believe in, but still he got like name called and targeted and silenced and all sorts of things, which really does still happen today. And it's because of those acts that are in place to make suspicion of the mediums, I would say. So, yeah, and I want to say as well about Cecil, which was quite amazing. He did die very poor. He basically, I feel, got driven out of business by all the backlash. But he was thought so much of that people set up the Husk Foundation to take care of him in his dying days. And when he was ill and he was still trying to work, they set up this Husk Foundation, and a lot of people that were around him and supported his work cared for him. And then near his dying days, they re-put into this fund and supported him. So his community thought a lot of him. His community knew the work that he was doing. But whilst that's being said, there was still a lot of skeptics and those that didn't believe in it and were trying to catch him out. He was known to have pins stuck in him in the middle of a seance. They would flicker the lights on, do all sorts of disrespectful things. And this is actually what killed the medium Helen Duncan, because the police raided her seance when they tried to silence her, and she still went back out and still spread her message, her work. I mean, we can see that happen now where people are being silenced in different ways and they still want to do the work of the light work, bringing spirit, bringing honesty, bringing truth to the community, but yet they get silenced or shut down in different ways. Well, this was happening back then too, to the mediums, the light workers, the so-called witches. And Helen Duncan got raided in this seance, and she was emitting ectoplasm. Now, ectoplasm is spirit matter that comes out of the mouth and goes into spirit form. This has been proven that people can do this. And what happened was, because they jarred her, she basically got 5th degree burns, I think it was, which later killed her in jail because of this breaking her out of a trance, which is quite dangerous to do. And this happened to Cecil. He got quite sick from people sticking pins on and flickering the lights on and like disrupting the process. And I have to wonder why people were so adamant about catching mediums out. I mean, how were they causing a threat to humanity when really what true mediums are doing, and I'm not saying some might not be fraudulent or some might be in it for the money, that's the same in any convention, any job, any career, but then there is a lot of mediums, and all of the ones that I've met, that want to give you hope of spirit, hope of that something else exists on the other side. I mean, it's the whole reason I set up my spiritual grief series, because I had lost my dad this year, and I wanted to bring that message forward, that death isn't the end, because I work as a multidimensional medium, because I work with souls and spirits and ancestors and loved ones, because that has always been my gift and my heritage from my family. And it's only something that I woke up in me when I was writing my play about being a witch and looking deeper into the question, why was I in this past life killed for being a witch? What was I doing that was so wrong? And that led me back to mediumship and speaking to spirits, because there was laws in place, and the lifetime I tapped into was 17th century. And back then, the laws were the Bible and the doctrine, because people believed more in religion until the Enlightenment was coming in, and the Enlightenment brought all the science in, which brought all the skepticism about mediums. But back then, religion had the words written, grant them not to have familiar spirits, to go a whoring after them, I am the Lord your God. And that message was familiar spirits, was channeling, working with spirit. You cannot go whoring after them. I mean, that's put it quite plainly. Do not work with spirit. You cannot work with spirit. I, the God or the king or the queen or whoever was in power, can work and did work. And I will get more into this as I go round the witch's will, because I will bring through things about John Dee and Queen Elizabeth and the royal bloodlines and the way that they worked, and that was legal. And at the time, the king was thought of as God, or a queen was thought of as the word of. So they had this royal power until science came in, and then there was a different kind of God that came in that said, you know, this is we will save lives and we will allow lives to expand. But what was getting butchered out was the healers and the medicine folk and the domination that was going over them. And I spoke a little bit about this recently, because where there was the burning times that happened in London, in Smithfields, there's been about 400 odd people that were burnt as heretics, witches, cunning folk there. And this is quite a silenced history of ours. I mean, this happened in London, but you hear more about it in other places, like, you know, Scotland there's a lot more cases known, but actually it was happening here. And I believe that there was healers working very well in markets, and it's actually Smithfields where St Bart's Hospital is the place of. So it was already in conflict with the other building that was there, basically. And the problem with that is that was ownership of the king. So once again, it's the king's word to say this is what you can do and this is what you don't. And that comes down into obviously not the same power as so much today, but then where is that power over? It's still very existing in our society, I would say. So, yes, Cecil. I just want to see if there's anything that I want to bring forward about my great-grandfather. Yes, the words of seance as spectacle. Now, because he was a trained singer and because he was a channeler, he was bringing forward an art form that they would call entertainment. But I would say it's not entertainment because it was uplifting the audience. It was bringing in a higher consciousness. He was bringing spirit through, and there is no higher form of theatre than being able to bring spirit or soul back to your audience, which is actually what I set out to do with 5D theatre, to activate souls, to activate our soul lineage, to activate a story in you that may have lain dormant. And the beauty of the work is I've seen that take place where people are engaging with the stories. I'm writing a trilogy, so it's in all different forms and all different development phases. But the beauty is that feedback that yes, that is what's happening. I'm having an awakening when I watch your play Awakening, or I am feeling supported because the second play brings out a lot of dark history and what's really happening on the transhuman trajectory. And transhumanism, I feel, doesn't honour the sacredness of the soul or the spirit. And actually, big names have even talked out about that there is no God, there is no spirit, that artificial intelligence is the God. They actually said that. I think is it the World Economic Forum? And I just sat there listening to it going, how dare you do this again? Say that we should buy out our souls, sell them down the river. For we are not soul, we are not spirit, and the AI is the consciousness we should go to, because we aren't these multi-dimensional, amazing beings that have access to all the knowledge, all the wisdom, all the amazingness in our divine template. We don't need to buy into the machine. And that is part of the revolution that I'm moving forward. So I want to honour my great-grandfather Cecil Husk for bringing me forward what magical theatre truly is, because he started that movement back then in London, for sure. I mean, if we want to go further, then I know that there's a lot of bardic arts that happened, and Shakespeare sort of fed into that, of the poets and the Druids, which has very, for me, big Irish roots and the Celtic roots, but beyond that it goes even older. And some even bring forward that Hollywood is built on this Druid. That's what Hollywood stands for, the magic wand that you use. And once I speak a lot about witches and the harmers and the healers, let's be honest and shine a light on Hollywood, who's had a lot of problems with the Me Too movement and the sexual abuse. And then we have the Sound of Freedom, which is shining a light on child trafficking, which steeps into many. Mel Gibson spoke out about it quite a bit, about the satanic forces that are in Hollywood. So it's all there for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Oh, my ears are tingling now. So both of the magical lineages keep crossing over, and they get corrupt and then they appear pure. So magical lineages are those people that are seeking enlightenment using magical forces and the occult. So while Cecil Husk was working over here, I also want to bring forward another person that was working in London at the time, and that is Florence Farr, who's been a theatre maker that's been fascinating me for a while. I went to the Theosophical Society quite recently from a nudge from a friend, and learned about her for the first time, and I literally felt like, whoa, okay. She's a West End, she was a leading West End actress and a writer. I later learned that she'd written 2 Egyptian plays, and as someone that's writing about the Egyptian time period, I was enamoured. And then I found out that she also channeled, and she was quite a mystical poet, and she brought spirit through, and she was working in the Order of the Golden Dawn. And her Latin name was Sapientia Dona Data, and that means wisdom or knowledge is a gift given to the wise. I love that choice of wisdom, because when you trace the lineage of the name witch, it means wisdom or the knowing one. And if you go down the Gnostic lineages, Gnostic means to go within, the knowledge is within. And Gnostics also work with the divine Sophia, which is the female concept of the goddess, the divine light, the feminine intuition. And Gnostics also work with the idea that we're in a fallen paradigm, a 3D matrix, as it was taken over by archonic forces, which kind of loops transhumanism back all round in full circles if you look into that. But the Golden Dawn is a tricky one. Tricky because it is an occult lineage, and it was actually Florence Farr who initiated Aleister Crowley into the order. Now, I'm not sure what the weavings of that or how pure it was. I know it still exists today, and I'm sure many people are working in it that aren't working with black magic or dark magic or harmful magic. But it is part of the path to be aware of this. And certainly for Aleister Crowley, who was a known Satanist and very open about that, and worked with very dark sex magic, dark rituals. He was into do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. And I've always had a problem with that, because do what you want, that is quite Luciferian. And the idea that you are this God force working with channeling, we are in this unity consciousness. We are meant to be using magic to serve the greater good, that we are all one. So it feels like it's a very dropped magic to me. And I know that there is a lot of dark magic that is weaved through, that is still being used by many people. It is used by the advertising industry, it's used by the media, it's all there as a form of mind control. So we could get deep in that. But to come back to the Golden Dawn, it was very much ritual practices and different things. And so on the first level, there were 3 orders. They taught Kabbalah, the elements, astrology, tarot, and geomancy. Then, as you went through the orders, you were taught more in-depth magic and ritual. And by the 3rd order, you were communing with spirits of the cosmos that were higher beings. Now, this could explain quite a bit of Aleister Crowley's devotion to Sirius and many of the lineages who work with that. And then there's also a lot of star seeds out there and cosmic consciousness people that understand that when you go through the levels of spiritual initiation, you might start with a family member that's passed over, or you might start revering someone, and then it goes into a higher, more multi-dimensional consciousness of star beings. Star seeds is what that's all about. So they were already tapping into this, and I love it that Florence Farr spoke out about blurring the lines between play acting, ritual and reality, which is something I'm going to speak into soon. She said there is a magic about all arts because all the arts can be traced back to old religions. And she went rapidly through these four initiation levels, and was started to be in charge of the rituals, and she was using ritual magic in her work by then. But she was part of the Isis Urania temple in London, and there were different temples in different places. But then she found out that the order were forging documents, and then fell out with them and joined the Theosophical Society, and went on to write The Shrine of the Golden Hawk and The Beloved of Hathor. Now, how much did she know about the corruption and the fall and what was taking place? Because in all secret, once you have secret lineages, secret occult and things that are pushed underground and things that aren't out there in the public, they are rife for corruption. And all I've known from doing a lot of research and a lot of soul work on these levels is that I have found fallen consciousness in all the mystery temples, all the secret cults, the Knights Templars, the witch lineages, the priestesses of Isis. There is some really dark fallen consciousness in all of that lineage. And this comes up again because when people of the Golden Dawn are working with that Isis lineage, are they working with the pure consciousness, channeling that in? Or are they working with a more fallen consciousness? And that is the draw. And I feel like as a spiritual person, this has to be your practice, to be really in tune with what you're working. And are you giving your power over to a darker force? Are you protecting yourself? And are you using it in reverence to serve the light force? And a lot of people are, a lot of us are, but there are people that aren't necessarily aware of how fallen magical lineages are. And that's one of the reasons I speak out about it today, because innocently on my journey, I didn't either. I've been trained in angelic Reiki. That's how I started on my bigger spiritual journey. And I didn't even have an awareness of fallen angelics, but I had a feeling that I was channeling things that were off. And it was actually through really working for years as a healer and as an artist and channeling different things that I really had to navigate and figure out this world and talk into the astral realm, which is the 4th dimension, the realm of the mind and thoughts, and also discarnate entities and a very fallen paradigm that you can only see when you can tap in beyond the veil, the multidimensional mediumship who can work with spirit. And this is a realm that is there, that exists for those that can see or tap or attune their supernatural senses. It's there to be tapped into, and if we don't acknowledge it, then we are not helping ourselves to evolve. Because I love to go into the 5th dimension and above. That's why I called it 5D theatre, to dance with higher spirit, higher self, soul consciousness, and to be aware of everything that else is going on, calling the wisdom in. But we have to know all the realms, and we have to understand that science has limited our capacity to really understand our quantum consciousness, our spiritual mass, our energy, and how big that is, how far we spread, and what we can tap into. And before that, religion did it in many ways, because it told us, no, we have to praise this God, you can't use this skill set. And then secret societies came on, and that was hidden from the public, certainly the higher up of the orders, and I believe they were infiltrated. That's not to say everyone that is working or was working with them is infiltrated. I don't believe that at all. But after Florence left, she actually wrote in one of the Theosophical journals, because she was quite a big feminist, and she wanted to say, and she said that the reformation of public health and marriage laws are not enough to liberate women. She said, we must kill the force in us that say we cannot become all we desire. For that force is our evil star that turns all opportunity into grotesque failure. So let us each recognize the truth that our first business is to change ourselves, and then we shall know how to change our circumstances. So I think that is a beautiful quote, that actually the work is within. That wisdom, Latin name that she'd taken on, was part of her work, to know the work within. And I will say that a lot of people in the Golden Dawn were using many of the practices I use. They astral travel, they worked between the dimensions, they were channeling. So I feel that this is an important part to bring back, especially as those practices went into ritual theatre. Aleister Crowley did his own theatre, the Thelema, and Florence Farr was using them in her Egyptian works. And myself, I am bringing forward ritualized magical theatre. And the reason I feel so passionately about doing it as a channeler, which kind of happened to me by accident. I mean, there's no accidents. It was a pure synchronicity. But it was through my training as an actress that I channeled the spirit of my nan for the first time, and she entered into the room while I was rehearsing. And it changed me and took me on a journey of training as a healer, shamanic practices, brought it into my practice. I now help other artists to help channel their own story in their writing as I use this practice as a theatre maker. It is my spiritual creative practice that I love to share with others, because I feel like this wisdom shouldn't be kept to ourselves. But I also got one eye on the occult magic the whole time to see what's fallen and what should be outed about that dark agenda, and what should be reclaimed by us healers. Because I do know that in my theatre work, I have accessed beautiful realms of other dimensions. I've had light come into the rehearsal room and dance around me. I've had spirits be in a cupboard while we were rehearsing. I actually have footage of someone waving a flag in the middle of nowhere. There was just this flag moving. I've had spirals of light dance around me while I rehearse. I've had orbs of light. So it's all there as these different light fractals to see. My work is very much working with pulling in the soul and bringing soul back to storytelling, igniting this revolution to activate our souls. So there's much more that's in the room, in the rehearsal room, but in the creative practice than what meets the eye. And it brings magical realism to a whole new level, because to me, magic isn't fantastical. As a genre, it might have been put out there like that, and there's a lot of wonderful magical realism films mainly, but some texts. But I want to bring this back to theatre, what my great-grandfather was always doing, and what Florence Farr was burgeoning with her own theatrical work. Because if we don't, those that are creating theatre are creating it in a different way. Those that are creating the movies, or Hollywood, or those that take over these mediums, because it tends to not be those that are working, rising up and trying to get their stories told. I mean, The Sound of Freedom has a really interesting story about a 5-year journey of trying to get that story heard, and then dropped from Disney, and then back again through Angel Studios as support. And that's the same with so many filmmakers and artists just trying to get their work out there and change the paradigm with their art. So this is a confirmation to all those soulful storytellers, all those magical practitioners, all those that are trying to birth in the new earth through art, that now is the time. We need these stories now more than ever, because this is creating the new paradigm. So I want to speak into that, salute that, and support that. And I will be doing that in a couple of ways. I will be running another Channel Your Soul Stories course in February, in the month of February, to honour my dad's birthday. And he also passed away in that month. And I feel that that's very important. I'm looking up at this calendar I have back from 2010, but my sister got me it years ago, and it's got Cheryl Prince Eimear Story also in the same month as my dad's birthday, Valentine's, and the month that he passed away. So it feels important because he's been guiding a lot of my storytelling for many lifetimes, and quite big in this lifetime, and he's still part of it now, even though he's in spirit. But also that having written a play about witches and the persecution of mediums, that I really want to bring forward about what really happened to the occult, to really out it and see how different things have been silenced and persecuted, and the knock-on effect it had of spiritual people. Because while I will always say and acknowledge there is a really horrific side of witchcraft, of druids, about all the different lineage of the Knights Templars, any kind of Freemasonry, any kind of secret society of the Golden Dawn, all of it, they were all infiltrated with this dark force. And the problem when it's silenced and shoved out of our history and not spoken about is that it's still rippling through, it still exists, it's still taking place now. And for me, the biggest revolution is to get all of this out, to get all of that known, and to reclaim that in the hands of the healers and not the harmers. So I'll be walking people through that, through the witch's wheel that I'm doing on all the powerful portals with Eimear, and we have a very powerful one coming up for Samhain, when the veil is the most thinnest. So this has always been a very important portal for me. It's actually when I'd like to get my play on Awaken next year, but this year I feel it's about calling in all the spirits for the higher good, and acknowledging and becoming aware of the fallen spirits and becoming aware of that consciousness, because that's what we're being asked to do as medium witches at this time. We're being asked to retell our stories, speak our spiritual truth, and also step in to reclaim our magic. And so I feel like I want to end with a releasing of the rage and spiritual persecution that's been suffered. So I am going to take us through a guided journey here to really feel into your own soul story, because your lineage might not be the same as mine. Your soul might be beating a different drum to magical theatre or sacred storytelling. But if you are a spiritual person, and all of my community are, whatever they call themselves, they are usually spiritual creatives, spiritual truthers or soul-led storytellers, or even spiritual misfits where they don't quite know where they fit. And a lot of us have pain around the throat. A lot of us find it hard to speak out about spiritual stuff. I have been on that journey myself over many lifetimes and many years, trying to out it, trying to say my truth, trying to be braver, trying to be courageous, trying to speak out my spiritual truth in communities that is not so comfortable, rather than just in my spiritual communities. That's what I'm doing with this platform. That's why 5D Theatre was set up, to speak the soul's truth as much as I could, and that meant my truth. And I'm going to be really honest here that actually some of us, when we start to channel, when we start to understand the soul story, don't like it. We kind of want to go, oh my God, I've just red pilled myself. And it's blown apart all that we've been taught to believe, even in the spiritual community, and it's blown apart what we thought the world was like. And often it's exposed that dark agenda that I talk about a lot, that's been playing out in the shadows, in the secrets societies and in the mystery schools and over the whole of society, because they are using magic. And a magical force is just bending the laws, the natural laws of nature. That is what magic is, and it's casting a spell that you can't see. So it's through frequencies, it's through the subliminal, it's through the subconscious, which is how mind control taps in. It's through reprogramming your beliefs and your body and dropping your consciousness. So sometimes people can think of magic as very mystical, and it is, but it's actually laws, physics, I want to say, mathematics. It's all of those codes and frequencies, because ultimately when I tap into spirit, I'm tapping into a frequency. There isn't a person, it's a feeling, it's a frequency, it's a color, or it's a symbol, depending how you tap in. My higher self, my soul self, my highest being, and that's what I was always taught to tap into, is this divine frequency. So with all that said, I know how heavy spiritual persecution can lay in this lifetime and many other lifetimes. So I want to take us on a journey and reweave that and heal that and soothe that, and inevitably bring us back to channeling the light and speaking our spiritual truth, because that is our soul's birthright. So enjoy. And getting comfortable in your body, either lying down with your spine straight, or sitting, or even dancing if you feel like moving out your body, which is a great way to release any trauma, any pain, any grief in the body. And I invite you to switch states whenever you like. If you're laying down and you want to get up, feel free. If you're sitting and you want to stand or lay down, just listen to your body's wisdom. And I want to take you on a journey into your higher heart portal. This is the space between your chest and your throat. And this is in a pyramid shape between them, and coming out to this silver portal, traveling into a time. And this silver light, this lineage, is like your soul story, reaching out into deeper consciousness. And asking it to take you to a timeline in this life or any other when you were speaking your spiritual truth and you were persecuted for it, for being you. It might have been the wonderful child that you were, the supernatural starseed child, or the witch, the wisdom keeper. And this was a lifetime of devotion to your craft, your magic, your occult wisdom, your knowledge. Maybe you even go down further into lineages of the origin consciousness, back into Egypt, Atlantis, times of high technology and also high crystalline light of priests and priestesses and those who had the gnosis, the knowledge. And I'm going to go quiet now while you witness how your lineage fell want you to go deeper into your spiritual truth. For when I was looking into why as a witch was I killed, what revealed itself later was I was a medium. I spoke to spirit, and they didn't like that. So what was it that you were doing? What divine truth, what soul's wisdom, what spiritual gift did you have that targeted you? And I'm going to go quiet while you reach deeper into your supernatural skill. You owe it to your soul, to that spirit, to that persecuted person, your soul, to reclaim that supernatural skill, that spiritual ability of yours, to live with that consciousness today, to animate it out into the world, to speak it, to live it, to breathe it, to own it, to know it. This is your birthright. Ain't no one gonna sell your soul down the river no more. And so I want you to send love and reverence and honouring for all you've been through on a soul level. And I want to honour you turning up and doing the work today to heal these timelines, to release that collective karma, and to shine in all your spiritual truth, you warrior of light. And if you choose to, you can dive deeper into this journey again and again to find out your wisdom. But for today, thank you for your courage, your free spirit, and your spiritual integrity to tell your truth. Coming back into your body, wriggling your hands and feet, stretching or dancing and shaking it out. Releasing any heaviness from your body. And if you have been very still, I recommend that you stand, jump, stretch, stick your tongue out, release, roar, make sounds, dance it out, and be your primitive origin consciousness. And whatever that gift was, I invite you to use it today.